Hello! Welcome to another Warcaster video. I know, it's been a while since I've uploaded, but we're back. Been through some stuff, but we're back, and we're going to be doing some hot takes today. I asked you guys ages ago for some of your hot takes in D&D, and today I'm going to be going through them. Thanks for your patience. Really glad to see you here. Let's go through some. Let's start with Twitter. For a game about freedom and imagination, too many people are attached to the overall rules and don't take advantage of adapting their storylines to custom-specific rule changes. Yes, I agree, 100%. I always say that there's no limit to what you can homebrew, and I think that people really need to be more adaptive and reactionary with what they do. And I've seen a lot of people, for some of the more popular D&D things out there, people kind of get mad when someone goes against what the common rules would say, or something that they think in the moment provides more entertainment value, or something that just fits better, and people lose their minds because that's not what the handbook says. And I think people need to be more adaptive and reactionary and just fit with what's going on in the story. People who say human fighters are so bland and boring don't know how to make real characters. You don't need to be a fish man who got his magical powers from a flying immortal plate of spaghetti to be interesting. You can do it with a spear and shield. I agree with this take. Absolutely yes. I mean, yeah, people are interesting in the real world. People are interesting, and none of us have magical powers, so I believe anyway. D&D is more fun when it's played in a more comedic fashion. I guess, yeah. I mean, if you're playing it to be more funny, then it'll be more fun. I think that's a given, but I don't think D&D is necessarily always about fun, per se. One of the best sessions that I can remember was when one of our party members died, and that was emotional, it was heavy, it was serious. It wasn't funny, it wasn't fun, but it was incredible, it was memorable, and everyone played their part so perfectly in that perfect maelstrom of chaos that it's such a memorable and evocative, amazing moment for me. And I don't think it's always about just, I mean, for me anyway, that's the way I play D&D, is it's more about the story and telling an awesome story with your friends, which includes adversity and overcoming obstacles, more than just, I'ma throw a rock at the thing and see what happens. Standard D&D rules are far too combat focused and lead people away from actually role-playing. Yeah, I agree with that as well, honestly. I think that, I mean, a lot of the rules came from, like, wargaming. That's basically what it was. That's what D&D was originally. It was just, let's go to a dungeon, let's fight some things, and then let's get the treasure. It was less about the roleplay and much more about the exploration and the dungeon delving. So I think, yeah, they do kind of need more rules for role-playing, but at the same time, role-playing is so vast and different depending on who you're playing with and how much role-playing you do. It's hard to quantify with rules, whereas the combat is very easy to quantify because that's a specific, like, it's like a mini-game as part of the overall game. So that, I think, can be much more rules-focused because that's the bit you can control properly. It's a turn-based combat system, whereas role-playing is just way too fluid, and it's social interactions and all sorts of crazy stuff you could never really predict coming. So I think it would be hard to quantify it, and if they did try to quantify role-playing and put more rules on it, it could be difficult because it may just get way too rules heavy. It could be a massive, like, here's this section just on how to speak to a barman. Death saving throws are dumb. I don't agree. There's no context here, so I don't know why they think they're dumb. I don't think they're dumb. I mean, if you're saying that they're dumb because your party gets them and the opponents don't, you can either give the opponents death saving throws or don't give your PCs death saving throws. I'd not recommend doing that one though. I just think they're good. They're a nice way to incite panic in your party because they go, oh god, someone's unconscious, but they're not dead. It gives them a chance to react to something. If there was some sort of crazy mishap. They got really unlucky, kept getting natural ones on their attacks. They got critted, and then another thing happened that made them lose a chunk of HP, and then they had to make a saving throw, which they failed, and then one thing stacked on top of another and another and another, and suddenly they're unconscious without having done anything. That would suck if you don't have the safety net of death saving throws. And I quite like them because they're fair and unbalanced. There's not like some people are going to be better at not dying than others. They're just straight split down the middle. And I think that having that opportunity for a party to react and bring them back is good for party morale and player morale more than anything. It just means that the players aren't upset. I quite like them. Character alignment is an outdated and overly restrictive system apart from being used as role-playing fluff. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of alignment in general. I understand why some newer players would find it as a useful tool, because they get a general idea of how they're supposed to be. They understand that not everyone thinks the same way they do, so they can have like, oh, I'm supposed to be more reckless, I'm supposed to be this, that, and the other, but I don't think you need alignment to make that work. Alignment, I think, can be overly restrictive because people try to adhere to it too much, because I think in most people in the world, people don't just slot into an alignment freely. People switch between alignments depending on their mood, or who they're talking to, or whatever. People can be assholes and can be really nice in the same person. It depends on the situation, or who they're talking to, or what else is going on in their life. So I think if people try to adhere to one alignment, that's when things get really messy, because it kind of restricts your role-playing ability, because you go, oh man, I think my character would be annoyed here, but nope, they're lawful good, so they must be fine with it. Monks are overrated. No? I don't think so. I think they're pretty good. I think people like them about as good as they are, so nah. The Sorcerer is the weakest mechanically designed class by a landslide, and only really works when used as part of a multi-class, but when you multi with it, it's amazing. They tried to make it special or unique by making it the only class that can now use meta magics this edition. Well, I don't know anything about the previous editions of D&D. 5th edition is my only experience with D&D, so I can't comment on all the previous edition stuff, but I haven't encountered this problem with Sorcerer being a weakest mechanically designed class. I think it's fine. I mean, the sorcery points are quite a unique thing, and having the flavor options with being able to take different meta magics and having the quicken spell and strengthen spell and, you know, quieten spell and all that stuff, I think that allows for flavor for each different sorcerer. I wouldn't necessarily call it weak. They get a solid spell list that they always know. They don't have to prepare spells. That's a nice buff for sorcerers. I think they're fine. I haven't played a sorcerer in in complete fullness, so I don't have all the experience required to give a fully formed answer on this, but in my experience, I think they're fine. Martial combat and armor class don't scale up well. The damage roll for a greatsword hit should be more for level 10 than level 2, but the only real increase is attacks per round. Other systems have attack bonuses that go up as you level up. That one's kind of more complicated to answer. I think armor class doesn't scale well, I agree with that. But I think because armor class doesn't scale well, then scaling martial combat also would then imbalance them. I think if they both don't scale well, then that's fine because they're both balanced in how poorly they scale. Does that make sense? Because if you balance one really well and the other one still isn't, there's going to be a massive imbalance on the scaling. If you keep armor class how it is and martial combat, you get extra bonuses to hit the higher you go. Armor class becomes incredibly unimportant the higher level you go. But if you increase armor class and not martial combat, then the inverse happens. I think they're fine right now. I think increasing the number of attacks per round is a good way for martial combat to stay relevant. I don't think having just extra damages, extra modifiers to attack rolls and or damage is the way to go, because realistically, what are you changing about your martial combat? You're just kind of hitting And you could make the argument that you're becoming more skilled, so you could hit harder or quicker. But I mean, if you're hitting quicker anyway because you get more attacks per round, so I think it's fine. I think it's fine. Min-maxing is odd, and people shouldn't force other people to do it to have a good time in a D&D game. Yeah, people shouldn't force other people to do what other people want to do. If you want to min-max, go for it. Let's just make sure that all the rest of your party wants to do that. Same with basically anything else. Just make sure that everyone playing agrees. If you all want to min-max, go for it. If you don't want to min-max, go for it. Any and all dice mechanics can be substituted with high roll good, low roll bad to speed up gameplay. Strong disagree with that one. If you just do everything as high roll good, low roll bad, you can substitute dice for coins and just coin flip for everything. Heads you win, tails you lose. And not everything in D&D should be a 50-50. It only scales if you have like a DC 10 something, then yeah, that's a 50-50 roll, and if you have like a DC 15 something and you have a +5 modifier, then that's the same thing, but that's the only scenario in which it's a 50-50. You could make the argument that high roll good, low roll bad, but there's so many intricate situations in which that doesn't apply that I strongly disagree that you should not use dice at all and just use coins, because that's essentially what you're suggesting. Out of character planning before big combat encounters kills all momentum a session might have, especially in the many cases it goes for longer than an hour. I disagree depending how you do it. I think if people are planning an ambush, or planning like a heist, or something that requires a lot of planning, that's great. I let them do that to their heart's content, because the more they plan, inevitably, the more they're going to fail, probably, and that's fun. That's a fun thing to play out. If they want to spend time doing a really intricate plan and plan everything out, let them do it. If it's just like, you spot these creatures over the hill, roll initiative, and then they get into this big plan, absolutely don't do that, because the characters wouldn't have the time to do that. If the characters are planning something, let them plan. Alright, let's go to YouTube. I got a few on the community tab that I posted the other day. Let's go. Hot take, 5e rangers are actually quite good. People look at class features like primeval awareness and favored foe and think that's rubbish, so their class must be rubbish, and don't realize that their damage is comparable to other martial classes, plus they get the utility of a small but well-designed spell list. Ignore the garbage features and concentrate on the ones that matter. Spellcasting, fighting style, extra attack, and the awesome subclass features like Dread, Ambusher, or even Colossus Slayer. I wouldn't have agreed with you until Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, because I think Rangers got a big old buff in Tasha's. Some of the new stuff and the optional features that they got are awesome, but with the examples that you're giving, I disagree. I think that Rangers aren't bad, they're just not as good as like every other class, so by comparison, they're bad. Because you say like, focus on the features that matter, spellcasting, fighting style, extra attack. Loads of other classes get that, maybe not the combination of all of them, but they're kind of like a halfway house between spellcaster and martial combat person, which is kind of like an Eldritch Knight, or other stuff that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. Like, you know, loads of other stuff gets fighting styles, loads of other stuff gets extra attacks, loads of other stuff gets spellcasting, and all of them do it better than all of them. If you want to just look at them as some sort of catch-all utility thing, then I think they need better features than, you know, primeval awareness and favored foe, which Tasha's has given them, which I think they're now really awesome in Tasha's. I really want to play a ranger because of the optional features that you get, because they're much, much better now. But I think just focusing on the ones that work and ignoring the ones that don't is doing them a disservice, because you have to take the ranger as a whole package, and just cherry picking the things that are good doesn't make the class good. Cold take, despite multiple editions and revisions of D&D over the decades, primary spellcasters are still fundamentally OP compared to other classes. Hot take follow-up, Wizards of the Coast should just stop trying to balance the classes because it's impossible. I kind of agree, actually, because, yeah, spellcasters are OP. You've got a barbarian that can go, I can hit an axe really, really hard, and your wizard goes, I can bend the fabric of reality. One is going to be more OP than the other, 100%. I also agree that they should stop trying. Stuff isn't going to be balanced, but the game isn't about balance and who can, you know, do the biggest thing, who's the most OP. It's about a story. You're telling a story with your friends, and however you want to interpret and tell that story, that's the way you do it. And I don't think it's about who can be the most OP in the party. Hot take, cliché stories are actually better for newer players. Extreme stories with plot twists and turns, while good for more experienced players, only turns new people off. At least for the first few campaigns, they should be at least a bit predictable. I agree with most of this, apart from the bit where you said at least for the first few campaigns. I think for the first couple story arcs in a campaign, depending how long your campaigns are, I guess. But for example, in the campaigns that I'm playing, the one that I'm DMing currently has been going on for over 2 years now, and my friend's one that I play in as well has been going on for slightly longer, I believe. So, yeah. I mean, having multiple, like, 6 years of just doing predictable stories, if we're doing 2 or 3 campaigns worth, that might get a bit boring. We might want something that we can't predict. But yeah, at least the first few, like, major story arcs in a campaign totally should be just getting the players involved and going, oh, okay, like, they get D&D, they get the stories, they understand where things are going. Great, and then you hit them with something unpredictable, and that's when D&D even gets even greater, I think. So I agree, but just not the timeline that you put. Alright, let's quickly check Reddit, let's go. My hot take that usually gets downvoted but never argued against is that the mental stat your caster is based off of is entirely flavor and can be changed without impacting game balance. Want a wisdom-based wizard or a charisma-based druid? Go for it. I don't know if I agree or not with this, because I feel like there's more implications than just what's your spellcasting ability. For example, if you had a high wisdom wizard, if it was a wisdom-based wizard, that means you're also good at all the wisdom-based stats like perception and insight and things like that, which is different, and I think perception is much more applicable than it is than like history and arcana, which are the, you know, the major intelligence stats. So I think it changes kind of how you would play the wizard. Maybe that's not a bad thing because you have different, you know, varieties of stuff, but I think it impacts then how wizards function, because you have, you know, your spellbook and your studious, and you would learn by learning from spellbooks and reading, which is kind of what intelligence is based around. Unless you change how the wizard plays entirely, I guess you could make it work. It's just whether you can have the different ability checks that are also influenced by that. You know, having a high charisma saving throw, that's a terrible example because those never happen. Having a really high wisdom save on your wizard compared to their intelligence save that they would normally have, because I think wizards are probably one of the most OP classes, especially in higher levels, but I think they're balanced slightly more because intelligence is their spellcasting ability, and intelligence is notoriously a pretty weak stat to have. So I think if you stack it more in their favour, with wisdom being their spellcasting ability, that means that they'll be even stronger. They'll have a much better stat, like a wisdom saving throw and perception checks, which get used way more, but then they wouldn't have the drawbacks of having intelligence be the spellcasting modifier. Does that make any sense? Am I making any sense? Probably not. The moderately armoured feat is actually pretty good. Take it as a rogue and you can become an effective frontline fighter, and you can deal lots of damage through flanking that can actually take a hit. On top of that, you don't have to delay yourself a whole level because you want multiclassing to gain that armor proficiency. Pair this with Media Armor Master and you have a really unique and interesting playstyle. I partially agree, but not quite. So, I don't think moderately armoured is a good feat. I agree with you that you could make a really interesting and unique playstyle if you took it. I wouldn't then classify it as good. I think those are different things. Fun and good are two different things, because you're talking about what could be fun role-playing wise, what could be an interesting playstyle to have, and what is like the best thing to have in terms of like combat. And I think it's not the same thing. It can be fun, but it's not good. It's not that it's bad necessarily, it's that there's way better feats for you to take. If you're a rogue with a crossbow, take sharpshooter, or you could take mobile, or whatever it is you want to take. But I think having moderately armoured as a feat also means you're sacrificing not only a better feat, also an ability score improvement, which could be crucial for your character. And also, if you want to pair that with Medium Armor Master, then that's another feat, so that would be to level 8 for you to get your interesting and unique playstyle, which could have been spent on 2 other feats which are probably better, and or 2 ability score improvements which could have made your character even more powerful. So I think it's the strange disconnect between good and fun that you're talking about, because you say that moderately armored feat is actually pretty good. It can be good because it's fun to play, but it doesn't mean it's good in terms of stats and numbers, which I don't think it is. So I agree with you, it could be really fun. That doesn't mean it's good. Playing a purposefully suboptimal character, for example a wizard with like 10 intelligence for roleplay, when the other party members haven't also made a similar power level, is honestly the worst for both the players and the DM, especially having to balance encounters. I agree with this because I think I wanted to do this at some point, to make like a purposefully suboptimal character. For example, if you have your wizard with 10 intelligence, it sounds like a fun idea on the surface to be not very good at what you're supposed to be good at, right? But the problem is, if the rest of your party aren't also doing a similar thing, it's really hard for your DM to balance encounters, because you've got your rest of your party that are really good at what they do, and they're just being a hindrance all the time. The player's gonna get burnt out because they never get to shine because they're pretty bad at what they do, and the rest of the players are really good. Also, the rest of the players are probably going to be better at the stuff that the wizard is supposed to be good at. All of the intelligence stuff, if they've only got 10, chances are you're going to have someone in your party that has a higher than 10 intelligence, so they might be better at the intelligence stuff than the wizard, which is what the wizard does. That player's going to get burnt out, the rest of the players are going to get burnt out because this player is a hindrance, the DM's going to get burnt out because they have to keep balancing encounters for 2 different power levels in the same party. It's not a good mix. If everyone wants to do it, if everyone wants to have a suboptimal stat in their main stat, sure, go right ahead. I think that then balances them all poorly, if that makes sense. They're all balanced, but bad, and at least the DM can then do encounters properly associated with that, and everyone has a much better time of it. Or you could just make your characters good. Power gaming isn't a bad thing, and 90% of the misconception that it is comes from a misunderstanding of what power gaming actually is. I don't know what power gaming is, and you haven't left the definition, so sure. So that's going to do it for your hot takes. Thank you everyone that submitted one for this video. Thank you for your patience while I was away from uploading. If you've got any more hot takes, if you've got some fresher, spicier ones than the ones in this video, then make sure to leave a comment leaving your hot takes in the comment section below, because I'll be doing another one of these at some point in the future. I can come back to this video and grab some more hot takes from the comments from this one, plus I'll probably do another community tab post down the line as well. But thank you very much for watching. Please leave your comments with your hot takes. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, enable notifications so you get notified first when new videos are coming, and new videos are coming. I have been Pete Quinnell. Thank you very much for watching, and that was Warcaster.